The rich aroma of simmering tomato sauce and garlic, a fragrant embrace, perpetually infused the air of La Familia, our family restaurant. It was a symphony of scents, a comforting melody that always soothed my very soul. Across from me sat Mark, my husband of 3 decades. With meticulous precision, he folded his linen napkin into an intricate geometric origami masterpiece. "Honey," I began, gently tucking a stray strand of hair behind my ear, a flicker of concern in my voice. "You've been working incredibly late these past few weeks. Is everything all right with the hotel expansion?" Mark finally looked up, a fleeting, unreadable expression crossing his features before settling back into his usual confident, almost too reassuring smile. "Just some loose ends, nothing major, you know how it gets." And, oh, we knew all right. Our entire lives were inextricably woven into the fabric of Isabella and Mark Incorporated La Familia, the cozy corner hotel, nestled right next door, and our modest chain of laundromats, all tangible testaments to our shared dreams. Countless heated arguments, and the relentless, unforgiving march of time. We were a team, a well-oiled machine that had weathered every storm life had thrown our way, or at least that's what I had naively believed. "Maybe you should delegate some of it," I suggested softly, swirling the ruby red wine in my glass, a knot of unease beginning to tighten in my stomach. "We have a great team, remember." Mark chuckled, the sound lacking its usual warmth, a subtle discord I couldn't ignore. "Relax, love. Everything's under control. Besides, He leaned in conspiratorially, his voice dropping to a husky whisper, a playful glint in his eyes. "I might just have a surprise for you soon." Intrigue, a welcome distraction, sparked in my chest, momentarily pushing aside the nagging suspicion that had been growing like a persistent weed in my gut. "A surprise, huh? Don't leave me hanging." Mark simply winked, a mischievous glint dancing in his eyes. "Not just yet. Let's just say you deserve a little R&R after slaving away for all these years." The following weeks dissolved into a dizzying flurry of activity. Mark orchestrated everything with an almost feverish energy. Flights, reservations, even hiring extra help at the laundromats. The grand surprise, it turned out, was a solo trip for me. A whole month in South Africa, a country I had dreamed of visiting for years. Just you and some well-deserved relaxation. Mark had explained, his eyes holding a warmth that had been conspicuously absent lately. "No work, no worries, just you and the breathtaking scenery." The day of my departure arrived thick with a strange, unsettling tension. Mark, looking oddly nervous, helped me into the cab. As I pulled away from the curb, I cast a final lingering glance at our house, bathed in the golden hues of the late afternoon sun. South Africa unfolded before me like a breathtaking, vibrant tapestry. I documented every moment, every stunning vista in a relentless stream of photos on social media, chronicling my solo journey back home. Mark's "missing you" text felt hollow, perfunctory, but I stubbornly pushed the feeling down, attributing it to the stress of running the businesses alone. Finally, after a month of exhilarating freedom, I returned home, eager to fall back into the familiar rhythm of life. Stepping off the plane, the first thing I did was switch on my phone. A torrent of messages flooded my inbox, friends exclaiming over my pictures, but Mark's usual enthusiastic, "Welcome back" text was conspicuously absent. A cold knot of unease tightened in my stomach, but I dismissed it as lingering jet lag. I hailed a cab and directed the driver home. The familiar street, lined with towering oak trees that had witnessed our lives unfold, brought a momentary wave of comfort. But as I approached the house, a sickening feeling washed over me, a premonition of disaster. My key wouldn't turn in the lock. Panic, sharp and clawing, surged up my throat. I jiggled the handle, shoved the key in again, frustration building with each failed attempt. Finally, my hand trembling, I pulled out my phone and dialed Mark's number. It rang once, twice, then a cold, unfamiliar voice answered. "Hello, John, it's me, Isabella." I stammered, my voice tight with confusion and a growing sense of dread. "Why won't my key open the door?" A beat of silence followed, heavy and ominous, then a sigh. "Isabella, but look, there's no easy way to say this." Mark's voice, usually warm and comforting, was flat, devoid of all emotion. I sold the house. The words hit me like a physical blow, stealing my breath. Sold the house? What are you talking about? My voice cracked with disbelief, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. Without even discussing it with me, another sigh, this one tinged with what sounded like cold annoyance. There's a lot to unpack here, honey. Look, the truth is, I filed for divorce. We need to split things up. The phone almost slipped from my numb fingers. Divorce, John, what are you saying? Tears welled up, blurring my vision. The world suddenly tilting on its axis. We've been married for 30 years. Oh. I know, honey, I know. Mark said, his voice softening slightly, a hint of something I couldn't quite decipher. But things change. I met someone younger. And well, he didn't need to finish the sentence. The ugly, raw truth slammed into me with brutal force. The missing text, Mark's distant behavior, it all clicked into horrifying place. Someone younger, huh? I repeated, my voice laced with a bitter sarcasm I didn't know I possessed. And who might that be? Another pause, this time, filled with an uncomfortable, suffocating tension. It doesn't matter, Isabella. The important thing is we need to move forward. Move forward. I choked out the unfairness of it all, a crushing weight on my chest. The business will be split in half. He continued, his voice now brisk and businesslike. You get the laundromats, and I'll keep La Familia and the hotel. The laundromats. I repeated, the injustice of it burning like acid. That's all I get after all these years. Fury, hot and volatile, bubbled up inside me. The call ended abruptly, leaving me standing in the twilight, the phone clutched in my hand like a useless relic. With trembling hands, I knocked on the door that no longer belonged to me. A moment later, it swung open. Standing in the doorway, a smug, self-satisfied smile plastered across her face, was a woman I vaguely recognized, Mark's secretary. Tiffany. She was clad in a skirt that defied the laws of gravity and a top that screamed impulse buy. She looked like a cheap caricature of everything. I wasn't young blonde and possessing a kind of airheaded confidence that grated on my last nerve. Isabella, she drawled, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. John mentioned you were coming back today. Where is he? I demanded, my voice tight with barely contained rage. Tiffany's smile widened a touch too sharp around the edges. Out celebrating our new life, of course. But before you get any ideas, she added, her tone turning pointed, a possessive glint in her eyes. This house belongs to me now. She flourished a key in front of my face, the glint of metal mocking me. And him too, I suppose. I spat, unable to hold back the bitter venom that stained my voice. Tiffany's smile faltered for a split second, a flicker of something akin to disgust crossing her heavily made-up face. But it was quickly replaced by a smug grin. Thanks for the well wishes, honey, she said. Her voice laced with a condescending sweetness that made my blood boil. Don't you dare call me honey, you gold digger, I growled, pushing past her into the house, the familiar space once a haven of comfort and shared memories. Now felt alien tainted. Mark's belongings had vanished, replaced by cheap, gaudy furniture that screamed Tiffany's atrocious taste. Tiffany's carefully constructed facade crumbled. Her eyes narrowed, and a vicious glint replaced the fake sweetness. Watch your mouth, old lady, she hissed, her voice surprisingly low and dangerous. For a moment, we stood there locked in a silent battle of wills, the air thick with animosity. Finally, Tiffany broke the silence, her voice regaining its saccharine quality. Look, honey, she said, feigning concern. The cops are on their way to escort you out. John wouldn't want any trouble. The cops, I scoffed, disbelief momentarily overriding my anger. This is my house. Not anymore, sweetie, Tiffany purred, stepping closer, her victory radiating off her in waves. Now get out before I have you removed. With a last venomous glare at Tiffany, I stormed out of the house, slamming the door with enough force to rattle the windows. Tears stung my eyes, a bitter mixture of hurt and incandescent rage threatening to spill over. But I wouldn't give Tiffany the satisfaction of seeing me cry. Mark might have taken the house, but he wouldn't break me. Taking a deep, shuddering breath, I pulled out my phone, the screen illuminating my tear-streaked face. The dial tone buzzed in my ear, a lifeline thrown across the miles. It was Michael. My son, the architect, building his own life in another city. Hearing his familiar voice rough with sleep, but laced with immediate concern, was a balm on the raw edges of my emotions. Tears streamed down my face as I poured out the story. Mark's devastating betrayal, the stolen house, the whole damn mess. Michael's stunned silence was almost deafening. When he finally spoke, his voice was tight with a barely controlled fury. "That old fool. Don't worry, Mom, I'm on the next flight. I'll kick his sorry." A small, sad smile touched my lips. "Thanks, honey. That means the world. But I can handle this. It's my fight." We talked for a while longer. His unwavering support, a warm ember against the chilling wind of betrayal. I rented a hotel room for the night, sleep, however. Remained a distant stranger. My mind racing, fueled by a potent cocktail of anger and a fragile sliver of hope. By morning, a plan had begun to take root, a fierce determination hardening my resolve. Replacing the raw despair, the lawyer's office was a sterile haven of paperwork and legal jargon. Together we unearthed the truth. Mark, in his desperate haste, had forged my signature on the house sale documents. His little trick of selling the house to his mistress wouldn't hold water. The courtroom was a tense battleground when the judge finally ruled in my favor, returning the house to me and splitting the business fairly. A wave of profound relief washed over me. It wasn't a complete victory. The laundromats paled in comparison to the lucrative hotel and restaurant Mark had fought to keep. But it was a start, a crucial first step. The key felt heavy and satisfying in my hand. As I approached the house, before I could even knock, the front door swung open. There they stood, Mark and Tiffany, their faces stormy with disbelief and frustration. Mark opened his mouth to speak, but the words died on his lips. "Shouldn't you two lovebirds be somewhere else celebrating your new life?" I asked, my voice laced with a steely sarcasm that felt surprisingly good. Mark sputtered, his face morphing between rage and utter disbelief. Tiffany, her carefully applied makeup cracking under the strain of her fury, threw me a venomous look. "You won't get away with this," she hissed. I simply shrugged, a small triumphant smile playing on my lips. "Actually, honey, I already have." 2 months had passed since the courthouse victory, and tonight I was the guest of honor at the annual City Hope Charity Gala. Stepping out of the limousine, I took a deep breath, the cool night air tingling on my skin. Diamonds sparkled at my throat, a glittering shield against any lingering vulnerability. Then I saw them, Mark and Tiffany, a grotesque tableau of forced arrogance in the doorway. "Isabella," Mark drawled, his voice dripping with a false cordiality that made me want to spit, looking, well, he didn't actually believe that, of course. "Revenge a dish, best served cold," simmered in my veins. "Mark," I replied, my voice cool and controlled. "Try harder." He opened his mouth to retort, but I cut him off. "Don't worry," I said, my gaze flicking to Tiffany, a pointed sweetness in my tone. "You have each other now, a perfect match of shallowness." Mark's smile faltered for a second, then he puffed out his chest. "At least I have a young wife," he declared loudly. His voice aimed more at the gathering crowd than at me. "Someone beautiful, unlike—" He didn't finish the sentence, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A flicker of anger sparked within me. Time for a little public education. As I was escorted towards the stage, the microphone felt heavy in my hand, a weapon far more potent than any diamond. "Good evening, everyone," I began, my voice ringing out clear and strong. "Many of you know me as a businesswoman, but tonight I want to share a story. A story about betrayal, resilience, and ultimately hope." Taking a deep breath, I recounted the events of the past few months. The locked door, the forged signature, the arduous fight for what was rightfully mine. A hush fell over the audience, their eyes glued to me. "And that's why," I concluded, my voice steady, filled with newfound purpose, "I decided to use my experience to help other women caught in similar situations. Tonight I'm announcing the launch of the Isabella Foundation, a safe haven for women facing financial hardship due to divorce or separation." The room erupted in applause, a wave of support washing over me. Mark, his face flushed with humiliation, visibly shrunk back into the shadows. Tiffany, her carefully constructed facade crumbling, looked like a thundercloud about to burst. The charity gala had been a turning point. Mark and Tiffany slunk away like scolded puppies, but their defeat was far from sweet. The next few days were a living hell. My phone buzzed incessantly with a barrage of vile texts from Tiffany. Each message a venomous attack on my looks, my age, anything she could dredge up to try and wound me. Ignoring the digital bile, I called Mark. "Get your mistress under control," I demanded, my voice laced with steel. Mark's response was a cold, dismissive laugh. "You made your bed, Isabella, now lie in it." That callous response was all the confirmation I needed. Mark wasn't just content with leaving me, he actively wanted to see me fail. Fine too could play that game. Mark had kept the flashier La Familia restaurant while I ended up with the chain of laundromats. Not exactly a fair split, but I wasn't about to let it break me, digging deep. I sold a few of the less profitable laundromats. With the cash in hand, I did some intel gathering and discovered that, surprise, surprise, Tiffany was now managing La Familia. A slow, calculating smile spread across my face. It was time for some good old-fashioned competition. Right next door to La Familia, a dusty old diner was up for sale. It wasn't much to look at, but the location was perfect. This was going to be my redemption song. The diner underwent a complete metamorphosis. Gone were the greasy booths and chipped mugs. In their place emerged a vibrant modern eatery, Isabella's Kitchen. I poached most of Mark's best staff. Turns out they weren't exactly thrilled about working for a screeching banshee like Tiffany. I knew La Familia's weaknesses: overpriced, outdated menu, and a terrible online presence. Isabella's Kitchen offered a fresh seasonal menu at competitive prices. We launched a sleek website with online ordering and a generous loyalty program. The grand opening was a roaring success. The place buzzed with energy, a stark contrast to the gloomy silence next door. Word of mouth spread like wildfire. Customers who used to frequent La Familia for lack of options now had a superior choice. Tiffany predictably showed up at my door, a screeching harpy, demanding to see a manager. The security guard, a burly ex-Marine I'd hired, took one look at her and politely suggested she take a hike. A year later, La Familia was a boarded-up shell, a testament to Mark's poor taste in both mistresses and business partners. As for me, Isabella's Kitchen was thriving, a beacon of success, built on the ashes of betrayal. Mark, if you were listening, this one's for you. Never underestimate a woman scorned. A few months later, Michael, my ever-supportive architect's son, burst into my office, a glint of mischief in his eyes. We'd grown even closer since my whole rebirth ordeal, and his visits were always a welcome break from the daily grind. This time, though, the news he carried was unusual. He began, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "Guess what the city's planning?" "Spill it, kiddo," I said, putting down my pen, intrigued by his hushed tone. "They're building a sewage treatment plant right next to Dad's fancy hotel." A slow, wicked smile crept across my face. Mark, bless his clueless heart, had poured all his remaining money into that hotel. It was his pride and joy, the last bastion of his successful post-divorce life. This little tidbit from Michael, however, felt like the universe handing me a golden ticket. "Are you sure?" I asked, wanting to savor the sweet, sweet karma. Michael grinned, a knowing glint in his eyes. "Positive, saw the blueprints myself. Apparently it's prime location for these treatment things. Not exactly the view Dad was banking on for his luxury experience, The image of tourists lounging by a pristine pool, while the aroma of raw sewage wafted through the air, was enough to make me snort with laughter. "Should I tip him off?" Michael asked, a mischievous glint in his eyes. The temptation was strong, but I remembered the vile abuse Tiffany had hurled at me, and the pity evaporated from my heart. "Nah," I said, a steely glint entering my own eyes. "Let him stew in his own ignorance. This one's on him." Mark, ever the gambler, had also taken out a hefty loan to expand the hotel further, tying himself to the sinking ship. The news about the sewage plant hit the local news a few months later, causing a predictable public outcry. Tourists canceled reservations in droves, and Mark's once gleaming hotel became a ghost town. One crisp autumn morning, I woke up to the news that the hotel had officially shut down, Mark drowning in debt, and a bitter taste of defeat had vanished. My heart didn't exactly do a victory dance. After all, the man was still the father of my son. But a sense of quiet satisfaction settled in karma. It seemed had a wicked sense of humor. Isabella's kitchen, meanwhile, was thriving life. It seemed had a funny way of balancing the scales. Mark may have gotten his young wife, but I got the last laugh. And a thriving business to boot. As I raised a glass of champagne in celebration that night, I silently toasted to a future filled with delicious food, loyal customers, and the sweet taste of well-deserved revenge. Isabella's kitchen wasn't just a restaurant anymore. It was my muse. The anger that had fueled its creation had morphed into a deep passion for creating a unique dining experience. The real joy came from the happy faces around the tables, the satisfied murmurs about the food, the vibrant buzz of conversation that filled the airy nights. Michael, my ever-supportive son, saw this shift in me. He knew the story behind the restaurant, but also saw the immense potential it held. "Mom," he said one day, his eyes gleaming with a familiar architect's fire. "Have I ever shown you my crazy ideas for expanding Isabella's kitchen?" "Crazy?" I asked, intrigued. Michael had a wild streak when it came to design, a quality I both admired and feared in equal measure. He pulled out a tablet, his finger flying across the screen. What unfolded was a vision that left me speechless. The existing building would be incorporated into a new modern structure that defied categorization. Glass walls offered diners panoramic views of the city, while the rooftop transformed into a lush, open-air garden complete with cascading waterfalls and hidden nooks. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen, a bold statement that screamed, "Isabella's kitchen." "Whoa, kiddo," I breathed, a grin splitting my face. "That's insane." "Exactly," Michael grinned back. "We can create an experience, Mom. Not just a place to eat, but a destination." We dove headfirst into the project. The construction phase was a whirlwind of activity, the constant hum of the machinery, a soundtrack to my growing excitement. Finally, the day arrived, the grand reopening of Isabella's Kitchen 2.0. The reaction was beyond anything I could have imagined. Journalists clamored for interviews. Bloggers dubbed it the city's new architectural landmark, and customers lined up around the block for a chance to experience the transformed space. Business boomed, reservations became a necessity, and the success was intoxicating. As for Mark, well, rumors swirled that Tiffany, the young gold digger, had finally gotten bored and flown the coop. He was apparently drowning in debt, and according to Michael, had become a social pariah. Months melted into a blur of activity. Isabella's Kitchen 2.0 was a runaway success. The reservations booked solid weeks in advance. Michael, my ever-enthusiastic partner in crime, was a whirlwind of ideas, constantly brainstorming new locations and menu concepts. The dream of a restaurant chain, once a distant flicker, was now a very real possibility. One crisp autumn afternoon, however, the past came knocking on my door. Quite literally, it was Mark, looking like a deflated balloon, his once polished suit hanging off him like ill-fitting armor. The arrogance that used to define him was gone, replaced by a weary desperation. "Isabella," he rasped, his voice hoarse. "Can I come in?" "What do you want, Mark?" My voice was cool, devoid of the simmering anger that used to lie just beneath the surface. He shuffled in, uninvited, his eyes darting around the tastefully decorated foyer. I need your help." The audacity of it almost made me laugh. This man who had betrayed me, lied to me, and tried to take everything I had now expected me to be his savior. "Help," I echoed, my voice laced with disbelief. "After everything you've done?" Mark slumped onto a nearby chair, the bravado completely gone. "I messed up, Isabella," he admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "Big time. Tiffany left me high and dry. The hotel's gone belly up and I'm drowning in debt." A part of me, a very small part, felt a flicker of pity, but mostly I felt a cold, hard satisfaction. Marmot seemed had a hefty right hook. "So you want what down?" I asked, my voice devoid of sympathy. "A handout." Mark shook his head, a flicker of something like shame crossing his face. "No, I miss you. I miss the life we had." The laugh that escaped my lips was devoid of humor. "That life is gone, Mark, and you blew it up yourself." He looked like a kicked dog, his shoulders slumped in defeat. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him, almost. "There's nothing I can do for you, Mark," I said finally, my voice firm. "You need to make your own bed now and lie in it." He stood up slowly, defeat etched on his face. "I understand," he mumbled, shuffling towards the door. I wanted you to know I was sorry. Sorry doesn't fix things, Mark. I said, the last vestige of pity evaporating. It never did. He nodded, his face a mask of misery, and stepped out into the cool afternoon air. I watched him go, strange sense of peace settling over me. Life, it seemed, had a funny way of working itself out. Standing there, the scent of success swirling around me, I knew one thing for certain: never give up on yourself. Fight for what's yours and never underestimate the power of a good revenge dish. Served piping hot with a side of self-made success. A valuable lesson: betrayal can be a devastating blow, but it doesn't have to define you. Instead of succumbing to despair, channel your anger and hurt into building something new and powerful. Resilience, determination, and a healthy dose of strategic thinking can lead to unexpected triumphs and a far sweeter victory than simple revenge. Your worth is not defined by others' actions, but by your own strength and ability to rise above adversity. What are your thoughts on Isabella's journey? Have you ever faced a similar situation? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if you enjoyed the story of resilience and delicious revenge, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more empowering tales.